I think it's rolling. Test
It
one,
says
two.
recording. It says recording.
Recording, excellent. So let's just keep rolling. Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning, Gene. It's nice to be on with you and
It is
conversing
nice
with
to
you.
be
Yeah.
on together, although the weather, at least in my neck of the woods, isn't so nice. So let's try to compensate for it with some nice, productive conversation. So we know each other, and we kind of don't need an introduction of each other. However, this may roll into a general public. So let's do a quick round of self-intro so people at least know who we are and why we here together talking. So I'll give you the honors. Maybe you want to present yourself
I
first.
was going to let you go first, but I'll
Sure.
go. Okay, thank you.
So,
My name's Bruce Newman. I've been doing Agile for a number of years, quite a number of years. Worked with many different companies on it, particularly working with a major company, one of the probably 20 larger, it's in the 20th largest company in the world right now. Uh, Working on all aspects of Agile, mostly doing coaching and working with a bunch of the teams to be able to structure how they can really effectively use Agile. And what makes it particularly challenging is it's a mixed environment of a lot of hardware development and software too. So what I really enjoy doing is discussing some of the issues that I've encountered over the years in Agile and some of the solutions, and hearing from other people in terms of what they might have to offer or suggestions they have along those lines too.
sure. Thank you. So not in so many words about myself, Gene Gendel, based out of New York City. New York State is my domicile. I'm an org design consultant, coach, trainer. Also do a lot of consultancy to senior leadership. I have been around the industry for decades, just in the space that's unfortunately called, it has the word agile in it, grossly overloaded term, about 15 years or so out of 20 plus of my working career. So my focus is on organizational design, system dynamics, individuals, teams, org structure, and various elements and system variables, as we call them, that sit downstream from organizational design. So that's really my angle. That's really my niche. That's how I approach my work and focus. So with that, I guess maybe we can entertain each other with some of the, I just have a small handful of questions for you, and we can just go, tic-tac-toe. You ask me, I'll ask you, and we'll provide alternative views on the same very questions we've asked. Would that work for you?
Sounds like a plan. I will ask the first question though.
Please do. Please do.
Okay. What are the underlying reasons for disparities of Agile adoption success in different companies? Why does it work much better in some companies than others?
Okay. So let me think for a minute. So Agile adoption, at least in my view, in my experience, Agile adoption as such is almost, inevitably going to stall, sometimes fail, if there is no genuine understanding, genuine need why there is a change on the way, why there is a need to change. I'm gonna kind of steal, almost plagiarize from John Cotter's. It's one of his quotes. In order for meaningful, sustainable changes to take place, a person or a company needs to have a state of urgency. If that state of urgency is absent, most likely there will be most of these changes will turn into, in our case, would be like an agile theater or pretension or a fake attempts of adaptation just for the sake of call it an agile adaptation or agile transformation. Different companies are different states of urgencies to change. And for some companies, it's just a matter of improving their balance sheets. For other companies, it could be a matter of external competition. And for some other companies, it could be just a peer pressure and the next trendiest thing to do because everyone else is doing it. That's the worst thing. That's the worst reason to try to become more agile, because now you are pretending to do something just because your next door neighbor is doing the same, but you have no understanding, no vision, no purpose, no idea why you're doing it. And of course, organizational design, original organizational design, which is the first order factor that defines system dynamics, would set the tone. So if you have a very complex, very archaic, very orthodox organizational structure with many interim layers and some of the more complex than needed dynamics, then changing this would be just more of a complex job. It's going to be much more difficult. So flattening or simplifying or making such organization leaner will be much more challenging. Of course, it will take longer, will take much more money, more time, more effort, and there's a high probability that it will not succeed.
I think there's more to it. I mean, I really subscribe to what John Cotter says, in the sense of urgency and everything else, but I think there's another component too. And even a company that says, yes, we know we need to move to Agile for whatever reason, if the senior management in that company isn't willing to change some of their practices, doesn't matter how much they need that or the desire is there, it's a good chance that their adoption of Agile will fail. And I've seen that happen where, where companies have said, hey, we want to go to Agile. Yes, we think it can really help us. But whereas on the level of the teams, the teams are working in sprints and, all stand-ups and all those great things, events and everything. But management is still turning around and saying, yes, we're still going to use our waterfall structure. When is this? When is this? When is this? Where is this? And I think that becomes a problem also. And I think that's one of the big reasons that Agile adoption can fail in companies where, frankly, it probably shouldn't. In that, that's one of the things that Cotter says is that if you have a few managers who are really, they're really stuck in where they are, and they've worked there for years, and this is the methodology, they can really balance up the system. And when you get senior management in particular, who has a lot more power, I think that's part of the problems that you have with Agile adoption and its success, right?
Sure. I think both of us have been quoting Cotter, and probably we should give the guy some rest. He also is pretty adamant. He's pretty blunt about what to do with those people that are either implicitly or explicitly sabotaging changes. He basically says, just move them to the side.
It's tough to do that when it's senior management, though.
Well, I mean, there's always a senior manager, so there's a difference. Well, it's true. So the difference actually is that a more senior person would be at least blunt and direct with you if he disagrees. A less senior person, like a first, second degree manager, what we call a frozen middle, they will usually say yes, yes, yes. And once you turn it back on them, they're going to do no, 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 and undo what you were asked to do. So that's actually Cotter's quote too. So you want to be more aware of the latter than the former. With the former, at least you can reason and know exactly what they're thinking. But I agree with you. Senior leadership, and by the way, there's a difference between leadership and management. Senior people often delegate learning and understanding to their beneath them underlying cohorts of people. This delegation actually doesn't serve them. It disservices them because they miss out on a huge opportunity to learn. So some great ones I've met, of course, and they are pretty hungry for learning. But there are just as many people that just go there for a ride because it's just a trendy thing to do. Okay, so I think that's
yeah.
That's what we I think that's why some agile changes are more, some less successful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, your turn to ask me a
Uh,
question now.
yeah, sure. Okay, so I think that was a pretty broad one. Let me frame this easily so that it's easier for you to understand what I'm asking for. Could you, what have you come across? What trends have you come across in the industry that would, um, signify that agile coaching and agile advisory levels holistically, systemically, have gone up or down? In other words, if you look at the industry overall, do you think that on average, agile expertise gone up or has it gone down? And I'm referring to agile people that call themselves agile coaches, as well as scrum masters and people that just in general have the word agile embedded in their name tag.
I think overall it's gone down. Um, I think you've got some really, really excellent coaches out there, some really knowledgeable people, excellent people who can really help an organization, who can really institute change and really can really help a company grow and prosper. But the problem is, it's very easy to go out and take a course and hang out a shingle and say, I am a scrum master, or I am a product owner, or XYZ. And a lot of these companies don't know the difference between a good product owner or a good consultant and a bad consultant, or a non-knowledgeable consultant. And I use one company as an example. And frankly, they're in a situation now where they've hired a number of consultants, coaches, but the implementation of Agile is all wrong. And it looks like the emphasis on these coaches isn't to really help the company, and I can't use the company name, as much as it is to get more business for their consulting firm. And I think that really demeans the power of Agile and the potential that Agile has to help most companies. So in answer to your question, I think there's some tremendous people out there, but I think there's a lot of frauds or a lot of people who just don't have a lot of knowledge and say, yes, I'm an expert too. And that's where the problem comes in.
Actually, what you just described, and I'm trying to be let cool heads prevail. I'm trying to be not become sentimental and emotional about this, but this subject is actually pretty touchy, and I wholeheartedly agree. That resonates strongly with me. Here is why. I think you said it right. It has quality of agile coaching industry wide has been deteriorating, and lately even at higher pace than ever before, just because it has become agile has become a trend. It has become a lucrative business, and there are more and more individuals that used to be XYZ role on Friday night, and on Monday they have added a bunch of acronyms to their name tag, and now they can consider themselves, well, I'm an expert because I think I should be. And it dramatically dilutes quality, and it's almost like a vicious cycle. I even wrote a publication on this at one point a few years back. It's actually more prevalent now. Low quality people get into a company, they lower a bar. Now this becomes a standard for a company, and they go out and bring in more people at the same level, if not lower, and it's just a vicious downstream, down spiral. And of course, they build their own internal agile towers, I call them ivory towers of agile coaching expertise, with expertise in name only, with lots of people that are very, underqualified and with very little experience and practically no self-education. There's many things we can validate in a person to say, well, does he have it, what he or she claims they do or not. And I think what you also mentioned about big consulting firms and staffing firms just diluting this even further, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, so as a client company, a large client company, you're probably very unlikely that you will be um, penalized for bringing in a big all-time consulting firm that, obviously they've done great for themselves over these, tens and tens of years. So it must be something right about that. And they end up with what's called DDT, deck-driven transformations, and people that are join their pools, internal, those external consultants just bring best practices that are in decks, PowerPoint decks, without true underlying knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
expertise. So that adds to this downstream, and they're expensive too, by the way. So there's
Yeah,
a huge disparity. Yeah.
there's a lot of money involved with this. So my question to you then is, my
Yep.
follow-up question back, what's the solution?
Uh, the solution to what? To
The
this?
solution to this dilution of knowledge, this dilution of talent, that the people, like yourself, who really know their stuff and live and breathe agile and have worked with many companies and can really make a difference, versus someone who just says they can.
Like we have a poem here. What's the solution to the dilution, right? Well, I'm always a big. I always have been a big fan of the concept of educated consumer. Educated consumer. So I love personally dealing with senior leaders, senior folks that are educated in the field and in the sphere where I operate. So in other words, my hope is that there will be more leaders that would be genuinely interested in understanding and learning, not superficially, but deeply, systemically, implications of organizational design and existing intricacies of their respective organizations, as well as the essence of a role, our role, a coaching, organizational design consultant role, so that they do not bless poor decisions, sometimes inadequate decisions of people that are below them when it comes to hiring and bringing experts in. So I think one of the ways to, at least to address this, is to make sure that our top-notch, highest paying consumers are educated, and they know how to delineate between real stuff from just refurbished stuff, brand new stuff from refurbished stuff, or real stuff from a knockoff.
They
And
know what to look for, essentially.
exactly. I'm using very strong vocabulary here, but in the end, if they cannot vet between good and bad quality, then they get exactly what they pay for. And of course, if they want to go down the route of having 4 or 5 bodies staffed into their firm in the capacity of an agile ... at a next number of dollars, then they will get exactly what they ask for. The challenge with that is actually, in addition to this is a better approach in any place when you're trying to go for the lower dollar, like for the bottom dollar, and get cheap resources. The challenge with agile coaching is that you're actually inviting in individuals that are expected to be I guess experts, leaders in the business. So they're not just performers and executioners and delivery people. They're actually someone who will help you mold and improve your organization. So if they're of low quality, you're not just bringing down a single product or a single service because it's going to be buggy. You're bringing down the whole organization is going to be buggy.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things too is, one of the things about Agile is it's all based. It's not based in talk. It's all based on looking at results at some point. Everything, there's a transparency, there's a visibility there. And I mean, we're always talking about like a definition of done. And maybe what we should do too is have a definition of done, at least some idea of what success is, so that some criteria, so that if I were to go into a company, yes, and I know this is vague, but I were to go into a company and say, okay, yes, we want to do this, 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 this. You're going to need to restructure this. This is how we're planning on setting things up. At least they have an idea of some metrics. I'd have an idea on some metrics and other things in regards to, yes, you're able to achieve something. Yes, you're able to show definite progress in an area, as opposed to just saying, it's hard to say. This is an empirical process that takes a lot of time before we see results. Yes, we can't do this because we need more people coming in. I think maybe being able to have some definitive, some method of being able to judge progress might at least help. And besides knowledge and everything else, but I think being able to show some results in a specific amount of time, say it's 6 months, 9 months, would at least put a limit on the amount of damage or that a bad consultant or group could do.
Yeah, as you spoke, I just reminded me of something. It's called an ethical dilemma of an agile coach or an org design consultant that actually does have any ethics. Something's called, you need to know when to push away from the table. Mm-hmm. Of course, you don't have to forcefully push away because it could be built in your original discussion and agreement with the client or with the senior leader who brought you in. But you definitely want to do a sanity check and a pulse check after a certain period of time. Just like we do an assessment when we join, we should be doing a reassessment after a certain period of time to see, have we improved? What has been really done in the direction where we would like to go? And if we're still at an uptick, maybe we should continue going. If we're at the plateau, then maybe we should either think of disengaging or rethinking our strategies. That's why I think adaptive planning is super critical here. And when we have a rack that says an agile coach is budgeted precisely for 6 months or precisely for 3 months, no day less, no day more. Well, the question comes naturally, what if this organization matures in 45 days or in 95 days? What are you going to do with that? You're going to be driven by this fixed SOW as opposed to, adaptive reflection on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not only that, if it starts to progress, and let's say it takes longer, and then you're out of time, that's a problem. Or if let's say it does it quicker than you expect, but it needs additional changes to keep up additional work to keep up those changes, it's going to take longer. Now you have a problem also.
Yeah, I'm almost a true believer. If I say no to my client and I can justify why I'm saying no, I'm gonna earn more respect and credibility than if I just keep saying yes, 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 yes. You were saying something.
You might have a better success. You'll certainly have a better success rate.
True, and in fact, even if I have to disengage sooner, the credibility that I earn with a client will probably go a long way. And the first thing they will do next time they have an opportunity, they will call me, or they will give a reference. Mm-hmm. Someone else can, call upon me. Once a coach engages in a transactional activity and just spins wheels and adds no value, it shows. And in fact, in my experience in observing some other organizations, the huge dysfunction I've seen is in organizations building these internal monolithic power towers, ivory towers of internal agile expertise and agile best practices and centers of excellence. I'm not sure what your experience is, but I've seen this grown to such an extent that it would be almost ironic to see, because whereas the goal and intention of org design consultants and coaches is to flatten, to simplify organization, they were recreating that very complexity in their own organizational structure. So they were substituting non-agile complexity with agile complexity.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's the benefit of that? Of course, very local optimized for their own existence, and turning this into an internal theater.
Mm-hmm. Ready for the next question?
Yeah. You to me or me to you? Who's
I'd
turn?
say it's my turn.
Okay, good.
Okay. Is there any particular industry that you think would benefit the most from agile adoption?
Interesting. So, a disclaimer, I've spent quite a bit of my time, I would say a significant chunk of my career in fintech, financial technology, investment banking, consumer banking, pretty much all over the Wall Street. Also in product companies and some other financial companies that were not banks, exotic assets trading firms. So anyway, boutique firms. So there was a gamut, but of course, to a large extent, fintech. But I can tell you, so I've had enough exposure to say this. It is more difficult in general. It is more difficult on average to become more adaptive, more agile in financial space, simply because everything is corollary to organizational design. So even culture and internal dynamics and processes are secondary to org design. In fintech, there is a tendency for org design to be much more complex and more convoluted because of regulations, because of some other internal norms and values that have been bolted in historically. For instance, in fintech, it is pretty challenging to empower individuals and teams to become. Let me just take a step back. It is very difficult to encourage individuals to become team contributors and share and care for others, as opposed to being individual performers and heroes and the next thing since sliced bread, because motivations and incentives are very financial, and it's by definition of how our organizations operate today. There are other reasons, systemic root causes, why financial industry is more challenging, although there have been quite a few exceptions. And even within complex organizational structure of financial industry companies, there could be habitats of happiness, if you will, or places, areas where you could do local improvements, and not to be confused with local optimization, but local improvements, as long as they are ring fenced and circumvented and protected from the rest of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then last but not least, I still think that the most important factor that defines which company would be more versus less successful in becoming more agile is not even so much the industry. It is more of a current state of urgency, whether it's a product company or a publishing firm or an investment bank or a retail business of some sort. If they are not able to afford waste, if they are not able to spend money,
not able to compete with their competitors.
Exactly. If they're not willing to withstand and at sustainable pace to compete with others, they will definitely scratch their heads and they will say, "Well, there's got to be something we need to do." But
I remember sitting in a meeting, as listening to the executive management saying, "Well, we're 3 months behind on this project, but we're going agile, so in a year we'll be 2 months ahead." And I sat there thinking, wow, I have all this agile experience and I have knowledge and so on, and I can't wait to learn that form of agile because it's certainly new to me. And I think what happens is when you start dealing with any industry, as you mentioned, it starts again at the top of what the company can do. I know I mentioned this earlier, but the other thing is, in terms of the industries themselves, I think, to me, the biggest challenge is with hardware.
Hardware.
Yeah.
Oh,
When you
okay.
have when companies are producing, the main product is a hardware product. I think that's harder to set up and to maintain because of the schedule lengths of testing, development, dealing with vendors and design and the delays involved with that. I think to me, they can try to do agile, but it's very easy for them to fall back into a more kind of pseudo waterfall scenario.
Yeah. Um, I think it resonates. I don't have a very strong opinion. I guess maybe I haven't given as much thought to this, but I think at heart,
But
I
getting
agree with
back to your point, yeah, I think that I think again, what you were talking about, and yes, going back to good old John Carter, um, yeah, that certain sense of urgency is what drives companies too. But in particular industries, I mean, I was just looking, I did some CRM, customer relationship management, way back. And, they talk about how that's agile too. And I guess it becomes your definition of what is agile or PDCA, plan, do, check,
you.
adjust, moving forward, and how you really apply that to the particular industry involved. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Yep. Look, so far what we've talked about this far sounds like, if we were just, extrapolate ourselves and just go to a more elevated position and to assess what we just have discussed as far as, I'm gonna probably use a pretty strong term, how to kill bad business. There's bad business out there, and if we remove it, if we trivialize it, if we make it less of, there could be great opportunities to help companies in a more meaningful way, more sustainable way. So I don't have a magic wand. I don't have a magic way of saying exactly how. I think the more we grow industry-wide awareness, and maybe people that are more senior and more influential in this industry should be listening to this, the more we will be servicing the industry, companies in it, as well as ourselves, because there is a lot of bad stuff out there. And it's almost these days, when I'm asked, what do you think you would add, or how do you think you would improve the situation? I typically would answer, can we please stop adding? We need to start removing. So in order to scale anything or in order to build anything complex, um, you need to create a good foundation. You need to start cleaning out debris. There's a plenty of, weak roles, ill-defined responsibilities, too many interim companies, really not qualified to do this kind of business, that are in this business. So and I guess what's required for this to be realized, and the aha moment will be really triggered by some sort of a state of urgency, or like a cataclysmic event of some sort, where people, like companies no longer can afford to fool around with this. There's no need to, to pick out specific companies' names here, but there were,
No, that part of it is how hungry they are too,
yeah,
how,
yeah.
how strong the need is. Okay, up to the next question. I think it's mine to receive.
Yes, yeah. So okay, mine question. So we covered this and that. Uh, so let's imagine you coming into the company, right? And
Mhm.
you have a, carte blanche, how to start your first conversation with a senior leader. You bypassed a first, second, third line manager. You bypassed all of the individuals that could be asking you wrong questions just because they don't understand your role. You're actually up against an individual who really has the power to make organization-wide changes, and he is really empowered um, to call shots. What would be what would be your conversation like with that person? What organizational domains would you look into? I mean, how would you structure a conversation with that person? I mean, what would you, how would you, how would you engage them, him or her, in the dialogue?
Well, my first conversations with pretty much anyone is knowledge gathering. I don't want to go in there and I'm not the expert in whatever field they're in. I can't tell them this is how you do something and this is and for one thing, even if I wasn't an expert, I don't know all their processes and everything else. I wouldn't think of doing that. Instead, what I would do is I would turn around and I would ask them a lot of questions about where are they now, where do they want to be, and what are the problems that they currently are encountering that they're looking to overcome? What are the things that are hurting their bottom line? You know, where do they want to be in a year from now? Where do they want to be in 2 years from now? And get all that information. Then you sit down and you start figuring out, okay, working back from there. And this could be, it doesn't have to be in depth. It's not an in-depth meeting where we spend 2 days or 2 weeks looking at this. It's fact finding, saying, okay, these are the situations. This is what you have now. Let's turn around and let's see, just on a general scale, let's map out some potential ideas and see how those work. And that could be everything from doing some type of VSM, you know, some type of stream analysis, value stream analysis, to sitting down and as a suggestion and turning around and saying, where is there potential waste? Where do you see the problems? If we tried doing it this way, let's come up with some potential structures. That would be probably my first, say that whole conversation would probably take a total of about 2 hours.
Sounds like you wouldn't lead off with the best approach, best practice. Here's the deck. We have it written in the deck, and that's why it shall prevail.
I don't know what the best practice is. I can always give someone a deck and say,
there one. Is there one?
Here's a deck of cards. I'm Agile, so I have all the answers, and we're going to fit you into this structure, and you can do everything with Agile, and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
I'll tell you what, Bruce, you're not going to fit the coaching definition of majority of companies that send their consultants into those client companies, because in fact, we often see this as the preferred approach, coming in with ready out of the box, unpack and install solutions. So I definitely applaud you.
But you see, the fun part of it is, the fun part for me is being able to make change, being able to make a positive change and turn around and say, look at how much better this company is performing. And what makes it fun, the thing is not just the performance, but seeing how people learn. If I can have a person in charge, a CEO or seeing a VP or whoever that person is who's making the decisions, and they're really on board with this whole approach, we can accomplish so much. And that's what it's all about. You know, it's not just me out there saying, I'm trying to make a buck. If I want to make a buck, here's a deck. Yes, we can do it. Yes, I have a track record. Isn't this great? If it doesn't work out, you don't go on my resume. You know, if it works out, you go on my resume. You know, instead, it's like, let's work together and let's see what we can do together. And that to me is where that's the challenge of Agile. That's the fun of Agile. Yeah. I mean, it's working with people and really trying to devise a solution. Agile's a framework. That's all it is. Let's take this framework, the Hashiri, and let's just turn around and say, let's make this thing work for you. And that's the approach I take. I need about 2 hours with someone to at least put forth my vision, you know, and my approach.
Yeah, I think it resonates with me also. Leading off with powerful, sometimes uncomfortable questions that take a person out of their comfort zone, make them think hard, challenge themselves, their beliefs, sometimes dichotomous beliefs, right? Some people have very ill-defined false dichotomy. If it's not this, then it's that, nothing in between. And then maybe putting them back into that comfort zone and maybe reflecting and giving some recommendations, but only when it's contextual. Also, I'm also a big fan of it's not so much it's not so much being a big fan. It's more of a way for me to address people's needs. Let's work back from a problem. Let's work backwards from what isn't working today that you're trying to fix. If someone says, I just want to become more agile, doesn't make any sense to me. I substitute the word agile with the word adaptive, as it was meant to be back in 2001. It's Norbert, Utah. And I say, okay, you're saying you want to be more adaptive, so you're not adaptive today. And that's not a layman. That's a layman term you understand. How are you not being adaptive today? What exactly isn't working? Are you too slow, too cumbersome, not flexible enough? If the answer is yes, then let's see what we can do to remedy the problem.
Exactly. It's really going in and asking those questions that give you the insight so that you can formulate what you think the solution should be and to present it to them. It's not sitting there and saying, okay, I've got this catch-all for everything. It's working with the client, working with the company to be able to figure out, how can I help you? How can we do this together? And that's what it's all about.
Yep, that's true. That's very true. Right. So what else? Is it my turn now to ask you a question, or
no? You just asked the question. It's
I did. I'm sorry. Your turn.
Okay. And this is one that there was something that was the State of the Scrum report on the scrumalliance.org website. And it talks about a number of different areas that, if they'd asked executives what they thought of were the most important things from Scrum-based projects. And I'm going to read them out to you in from most important to less important. And I want you to, after I read them out, to mention what you think are your 5 most important points, because I don't agree with what the executive said fully. Okay, so.
Okay. Go ahead. Yep, I'm with you.
The most important thing was delivering value to the customer. Second was flexibility and responsiveness. Third was quality. Fourth was transparency. Fifth was schedule deadlines. Sixth is visibility. Seventh is team engagement and satisfaction. Eighth is cost. 9 is innovation. And the 10th, or the least important one they considered, was improving organization design and culture.
So the order that you just mentioned, these in the order, you read this off in the order how?
This is the order that the executives who were asked in this survey responded in terms of their order of importance.
So it sounds so. I
valued most by executives, starting with delivering value to the customer and ending with improving organization design and culture.
So adding value is number 1. Org design and culture is the last one. Is that right?
That's right.
So I actually did not see. So I should be probably scrumalliance.org is my is something I should be checking out more often, because the organization I strongly support.
Me
However, yeah, you too, right? So, but I will confess I haven't seen that. I'll admit I haven't seen that list in that, especially in that order. But so this is interesting. So this is what it tells me. So of course this is a service. So what's listed here is by serving a large pool of senior managers, and of course it's not just one person. This is many people. Is that right?
It's executives. I do not know the number of people who they asked. I just know that they just put up the percentages.
So here's my so allow me to spell this out a little the way I see it. It resonates with me, strongly resonates with me, that adding value to a customer should be at the very top, if not the highest, but it should be one of the highest. I think what's missing there also is making your own people, aka employees, happy and successful. So company, there's also a philosophy behind what should be concerned more about in improving your stock value, your publicly traded stock value, versus making your own people happy and willing to stay with you. So if you concentrated more on the former and forget about the latter, good people are going to leave, and your company is going to, deteriorate in quality of services and products they make, and it's going to have a cascading downstream spiral effect, and the stock was going to drop.
Also, part of sustainability too.
Yeah, if you care about your own people, then inevitably, as a downstream positive feedback loop, your company will be more prosperous and the stock is going to go higher. But it's super interesting to me that organizational design and culture are being put at the very bottom. Here's my read to this. So I'm not sure exactly how the question was framed. If it was framed something like, what's the most important thing to you to succeed at, then I can understand why org design and culture were not necessarily given a preference, because people may want to concentrate on things that are more peripheral, more measurable, like a level of customer satisfaction. However, if the question was framed differently, and I don't know how it was framed, by saying, what do you think is the most important thing to lead to customer satisfaction, then from a standpoint of organizational modeling, system modeling, people who did not think that org design is an important factor, they probably missed the plot. I think organizational design and culture that follows are pretty critical from a standpoint of, so it's a pretty important variable, pretty important factor that defines many, many downstream things.
I agree with that. I think that's one of the things that is critical, which is if you one of the things that's kata, that's agile, you're improving the culture. If the teams are really happy and the people really feel they're motivated and they really feel like they're making a difference. Now you see the videos on YouTube where they talk about motivation videos where, provided the people get a decent salary, they're not, the incentive isn't necessarily additional money. The incentive is, what have I accomplished? What can I do? Isn't this great? And if you can do that with Agile, that's a great thing with the teams and changing that whole culture. That's one of the key things. The other thing that I really think is important too, and the innovation will come from that, but the other thing that I think is also really important is visibility. And I think the visibility of the results of what people are doing, and the fact that you've got this visibility so that it protects the teams themselves, so that, yes, you've got the product owner and you've got the scrum master turning around and saying, yes, we won't allow external changes to a sprint and so on. But quite frankly, when you have that visibility, I think that becomes a really important factor, because teams can say, listen, we don't have any more, we don't have any more capacity. This is what we have and to do this sprint. And if you want to change something, or you want to adjust something, you go to how high priority is, what can I take out? What do I have to remove to be able to put that in? I think that becomes a really, really important part of changing the whole culture.
Good points. Resonates with me, bros. Yep, indeed. Yes, indeed. Hey, we got what? We got 10 more minutes to chat.
Got about 10 more minutes.
Yeah, I got one more. That's
got one more question for me. We're right on time. Look at this. This is pretty good.
That's without preparation, without dry running. That's pretty good for the first time, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So okay, I'm gonna. Am I shooting, or you? Who's going?
It's you. I've asked my 3 questions. You're on your last one.
Oh, that's it. Oh, is that it? Okay, cool. So the last one. So I come across this pretty often, and of course, I have my own, gamut of experiments and experiences to share Let me frame the subject about communities, building internal communities that are specifically geared towards functional learning, horizontal organizational structures. So I've been to to various organizations where this concept has been perceived differently, and it also had to do historically with some of the past past experiments that they have ran. So let me ask you this question: what have you seen? What have you been a part of in terms of building internal communities, or communities of practice, sometimes they're called,
Hmm.
horizontal organizational structures that are meant for functional lateral learning by individuals, and employees? I'm going to pause. I'm going to give you my insight as well. Hopefully, only if after you speak up.
I really, really like the idea of communities of practice, particularly when they're cross-functional, because what ends up happening is you get people from all areas of a company who want to learn, who can go ahead and you put that information out, and you can have meetings and discussions about that. And I think there's a lot to be gained from that. When you have but the key thing there is you have to have a critical mass of people. My experience has been that I've seen too many of these communities of practice, or even centers of excellence, start to start strong and quickly devolve into nothing. People become uninterested. They have other things to do. They gain less. There's less importance. I think what happens is you really need core group and a critical mass to get people involved with that learning. Look, people are very busy and they don't always have time to do these things. And if they don't consider it a priority and they aren't really interested, self-motivated in learning, they don't participate and the endeavor dies. I had one COP where literally several people came in and pretty much destroyed it. So I think it depends on a couple of things. The critical mass, the quality of the people, and the intent of the people. If the intent is pure, if it's let's learn, let's see what we can do, let's work together, let's have meetings, let's discuss this, whatever, I think it's a great thing.
Thanks for sharing the perspective. Valuable and useful to me. So let me share just a couple of things on my end. I think it's a pretty important subject for me lately in general, for a variety of reasons. So especially in large scale Scrum, where I operate a lot in space where large scale Scrum principles and values and guides and norms and experiments are being exercised. This has been done for more than a decade, but more so from a personal experience. So a community is meant to be a horizontal organizational structure that is not hierarchy based. And what I've seen some companies do, and wrongfully so, is flipping their existing organizational structures on its side, and almost like invisible, and making them now into going from vertical to horizontal, while retaining some of the elements of the vertical organizational design, such as
Kind of defeats the whole purpose of a COP.
the purpose. So it takes away an essence of joining by volunteering, leaving whenever you want to, joining and leaving as you wish. It makes those structures into almost mandatory organizational structures where you have to participate by a mandate. If you don't, you will be treated as an outcast, as almost an underperformer. In better places where I've seen communities of practice work well, they were treated as I call it King Arthur's City of Camelot round table of knights, where people would come together, put their swords down, doesn't matter who is at what level of seniority, they come and they'll level with one another and they'll learn from one another. So as long as communities are being treated as dimensions of functional or cross-functional learning, it is certainly it is great. It would be a great way to cross-pollinate um, within organizations that are flattened. But if those communities are unfortunately just in name only, but historically just refurbished, redesigned or renamed archaic organizational structures that will not be fruitful. It will just lead to some bad behaviors, and people will be very hesitant and very reluctant to join and participate. So to me, this is a very important element. Removing or not even introducing the orthodox, historical, archaic organizational design principle into a community. A community is like a meetup.com, right? You don't have to, nobody forces you to join a group. Nobody can, unless you misbehave in some, and, breach some SLAs, basic SLAs, you'll be there, right? Or you can leave whenever you want. So that's the premise. That's the notion of being a community. Hopefully you have some thoughts on that, or
no, I really like communities of practice. I like centers of excellence. I really like communities of practice. I think there's a important in almost every company, because there's a sharing of knowledge, and people who want to get involved, they want to learn about what's going on, or they want to learn about some particular area. It's a great opportunity. It's at no risk to them. Provided all it requires basically is enough motivated people to make it happen.
Yep. I think we are kind of saying the same thing, maybe in slightly different words, but
we've agreed on all 6 of our questions. I don't know.
Look, to make it less, since it's going to roll to a general public, we may need to be a little more, next time. So we try to do it without a dry run. Maybe next time we need to pick a point or two where we see things differently, just to spice things.
I think that'll come out. I think that'll come out as we go. Quite frankly, I think as we get more and more into the depth of the topics and so on, I think we'll start seeing some differences.
Yeah,
we both have plenty of knowledge and experience. It'll be interesting to see how they align with each other.
Yes, indeed. Hey, Bruce, listen, I personally enjoyed it very much. I think, I learned myself, I learned the hard way. Well, this is not the hard way, the first-hand way, that the less prep and the less of hard planning we have, the more dynamic and adaptive we are in doing things, in doing these things, the better we are.
I agree with that.
It's good preparation for this, right? I mean, what would we say we do? We ask 3 and 3 questions, 3 questions.
3 and 3 questions. I think the toughest thing in preparing for this was making sure I could get into Zoom. I was having problems for a few minutes.
I'll take blame for that. Cool. So listen, I'm gonna zap it. I'm gonna let it, cook in the cloud.
Okay.
Once I have a link, I'll share with you. Feel free to share with your audience, and
sounds good.
I'll share with mine, and maybe
let's get back together. I go on vacation on Friday, so let's get back together and do another one of these. How about in January?
That would be amazing. Yeah, reloaded and re-energized in 2020. Then
hopefully not without too much weight, extra weight.
Yeah, well, we're up to head, so no one sees us.
Fair enough. I can always slough down a little bit too.
Yeah. Let me see how. So before, I don't want to ruin it. So I'm gonna put a pause or stop. Stop recording.
I would say stop. Maybe
stop. Right? So once I stop, let me try it.